What's going on, everyone? It is the Derf, and today I have got a build for you guys centered around LODESTAR. With the release of Act 2, LODESTAR is arguably more powerful than ever. Even without the catalyst, it is slowly but surely becoming meta, and with this Arc Warlock build, that is going to play a major role in it. So if you guys have been looking for an updated Arc build for Act 2 here in Heresy, this is the build for you. You can take this build into Guardian games, you can take this build into Nightfalls. It will wreck. It will bring you tons of orbs of power, lots of ionic traces, which of course means ability regen, and 1 minute supers. So if you guys do find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian out there that is looking for an updated Arc Warlock OG style for Act 2 here in Heresy that takes advantage of trace rifles, this is the build for you guys. Let's get on into it. So we've got the Stormcaller Warlock subclass. Our super of choice, of course, is going to be Chaos Reach. Creates a jolting lightning strike at the position, and with the exotic armor we're going to be using, all the damage we do is going to extend the duration of Chaos Reach, and it also can stun Overload champions. I prefer using the Healing Rift and the Burst Glide, and for the melee I prefer the Ball Lightning as well as the Flashbang Grenade. The Flashbang Grenade is nice because it can blind unstoppable champions, which stuns them, but also it doubles down on our aspects as well. Electrostatic Mine is our first aspect. Defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an ionic trace. Collecting an ionic trace makes you amplified. This is going to be no problem at all for us. We're pretty much going to be amplified the entire duration of any kind of busyness worth of an activity. Ionic Sentry makes a reappearance here. Defeat targets with kinetic or arc weapons or arc abilities to charge up an arc turret that periodically chains lightning between nearby targets, granting a stack of bolt charge with each hit. Deploy the Ionic Sentry, blinding nearby targets on initial impact, and of course you use your grenade button to activate that. You want to get as much bolt charge as possible so that you can activate as many Ionic Sentries as possible. Not only that, but it's another way you can blind all combatants on the battlefield at a given time, as well as stunning unstoppable champions. And I'm telling you, this thing, once you see it in action, this thing is absolutely going to blow your mind as far as how often we're going to be able to get literally every ability. For fragments, our first fragment is Spark of Discharge. Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an ionic trace. Collecting an ionic trace grants you a stack of bolt charge. So ionic traces, thanks to our aspects as well as this fragment, are going to not only amplify us but also give us bolt charge. So we're going to be getting ability energy at the same time as charging up our Ionic Sentry, which again, we're going to be spamming those like crazy. -10 to strength, but don't worry about that. That's literally not going to affect you at all. Spark of Amplitude is our second fragment. Rapidly defeating targets while you are amplified creates an orb of power. I want to be able to generate orbs of power simply because we're going to have some mods to give us some healing, and every orb of power we're going to pick up not only is going to give us ability energy, super energy, and class ability energy, it's also going to heal us as well, which is going to be important in harder content. Spark of Ions is our next fragment. Defeating a jolted target or defeating a target with bolt charge creates an ionic trace. Of course, ionic traces give us ability energy, bolt charge stacks to eventually give us ionic trace, and of course jolting a target will activate this as well, which again will be no problem for us whatsoever. Spark of Resistance rounds out our fragment selection. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. +10 to strength on this, so take the freebie on that. You do want this, especially in harder content, because you are going to be getting bombarded like crazy. Now, if you're just running basic vanguards or you're just palling around on, let's just say, the moon or Neomura or your favorite planet, just kind of roaming around, just doing stuff. Maybe you're doing public events or things like that. You may not necessarily need Spark of Resistance, but once you get into a Nightfall, a GM, or any kind of harder content, Spark of Resistance gives you, I think it's a 15% damage reduction overall to incoming damage. So you're going to want that because, quite honestly, it's just a nice way to round out the overall build because you're going to be playing pretty aggressive. So it makes sense to try to minimize the need to constantly be looking over your shoulder. For stat distribution, I recommend focusing on resilience, discipline, and strength in that order. Recovery is nice if you have it at about a 5 or higher. I've got mine, of course, at the bare minimum of my threshold. Having it at a 5 means that your cooldown for your Rift is not going to be a minute and 22 seconds. It's going to be more like a minute flat. So that's important in case you do get into a spot where you absolutely need to get some healing right now. And then your intellect is not really going to matter, but you want to be at a bare minimum above a 3. I've got mine at a T4. But again, with the amount of ability energy we're going to be generating, the amount of jolt we're going to be generating, all these things are going to feed into our exotic armor as well as feeding into our overall play. And it's just going to be nonstop madness with this class. And then strength, the reason you want that at a T6 or higher, which is what I would recommend, is once you get the stack of bolt charge, if you're not throwing your ionic sentries or especially your flashbang grenades, you are going to be able to generate that lightning strike with your melee. And once you get in a rhythm, sometimes it's easy to forget that you even have a melee, considering you're waiting for that ionic sentry to charge up so much. So having that as kind of a double back, as a kind of an instant mini DPS session with a group of enemies is very nice to have because, of course, that's going to generate an ionic trace as well and give you ability energy back also and make you amplified if you aren't already. For weapons, in the kinetic slot, I'm going with the Supremacy. Rewind rounds and kinetic tremors is going to pair very nicely with some of the, with at least one of the artifact perks, but really two that I'm going to focus on once I get to the artifact here in a minute. I highly recommend a sniper in this area because it allows you a very good backup DPS option. And it also, if you have something that's got kinetic tremors on it that's enhanced like the Supremacy, all it takes is 2 taps and boom, you've activated kinetic tremors. And sniper rifles, that's sniper rifles across the board. So the Supremacy, if you haven't gotten your hands on that, take the time to try to farm that out. But if you don't have the Supremacy, you can also run Succession from the Brave arsenal. In here, it's got the Focus Fury. This is the curated roll, the gold roll, so to speak. Dealing half of the magazine as precision damage grants this weapon bonus damage. The shot count is reset whenever the weapon is reloaded or stowed. So as you can see, I haven't used this very much because I had Supremacy before I unlocked Succession back last year when this was floating around. But if you've got this sitting in your vault, it's time to bust it out. A lot of these activities, especially for Guardian games that's going on right now, you have extremely short DPS sessions in some of them. Some of them you have extremely long ones, and that's why we've got other weapons and our super, of course, to take care of that. But for the shorter ones, you want to be able to do quick burst damage, and if it's a very sweaty situation, having something like Kinetic Tremors or Focus Fury is going to help you immensely. And it does pierce the bubble for barriers because I'm not really worried about unstoppables. So if you don't want to run a sniper, of course you can put the call on, make sure you mod your artifact as such. And if for some reason, after all of the explanation of the class itself, if you are still worried about unstoppables, which really shouldn't be bothering you at this point in the build, you can always put on Scatter Signal. It does excellent burst damage to unstoppables and will stop them in an instant. But I'm telling you, you're not even going to be worried about unstoppables at all with this build. For our energy slot, there is only weapon that I can suggest. LODESTAR. Now, LODESTAR, interestingly enough, we don't have the catalyst for it, but this weapon is, if people aren't calling it meta, I'm going to say it is near meta, if not meta itself, and it's going to depend on the catalyst. As of right now, the way that this weapon feeds this build is absolutely ridiculous. It's going to generate a ton of ionic traces. It has the ability with the arc alignment to jolt targets, and as you jolt a target, it's creating ionic traces as well. And also it's going to pair with the artifact and the various buffs you can get with that. And the most fun that I've ever had hip firing a weapon comes from this weapon itself. And you can see I just recently got really into it, trying to figure out the best way to pair this. And I haven't done a LODESTAR build yet this season. I know there's people out there that have tried making builds for it, but with the recent Act 2 changes to the artifact, this thing is absolutely springboarded to the top of my list of weapons you need to get used to playing with, and you need to figure out a way to incorporate into as many builds as possible. Being able to stun overloads with Jolt intrinsically with this weapon is going to make this weapon extremely viable for a long time to come. And not to mention, it puts out pretty decent damage. Not something you would say when you compare it next to like a Cold Heart, which of course is a special ammo weapon, but for a primary ammo trace rifle, I gotta say, this thing, once you get used to how it handles and fires, it is ridiculously fun to use. And once you activate that jolt, you see those DPS numbers go up. Man, it's pretty awesome to see these bosses just kind of start to slowly melt in front of you. And then you finish them off with your Chaos Reach or your heavy weapon. And it's like, wow, this is amazing. So take advantage of it while it's here in this season. LODESTAR for sure, though, is going to be something that's going to be able to cycle through a lot of people's repertoires even after this season because of its jolting ability, which hopefully they never stop making it stun overloads, but if they ever do, people will for sure put this thing down. So get to it, level it up, get it up to snuff, and take it into your favorite strike and just see how it goes. For the heavy slot, I am 100% recommending Watchful Eye. Now, this might seem kind of redundant considering I just went over a weapon that can stun overloads, but one of the things that a heavy weapon that has jolting feedback can do is sometimes slow down bosses. I'm thinking of the Illusion of Savathun from yesterday's Guardian games, or the first day, I should say, of the Guardian games, the rotation. When I laid into that boss with a jolting feedback machine gun, or just a machine gun in general that was able to stun overloads, the boss hesitated, which means that with jolting feedback, and if you have overflow as well as enhanced jolting feedback, it's going to apply jolt faster, which means you'll be able to take advantage of the Willing Vessel trait, which is dealing damage or defeating targets with this ability gradually grants increased stability, handling, reload speed, and charge rate. This effect gradually decreases over time, but is gained more quickly while near allies. So when you're hunkered down firing at a boss from somewhere, maybe you're behind a Titan's barricade, or you're hogging some of the rift that another Warlock has put down, or maybe everyone's hogging your rift that you just put down. Either way, you're going to be able to slow down the boss's attacks with this weapon. So if you haven't gotten your best roll of Watchful Eye yet, which, overflow and jolting feedback is probably 1 or 2 for the God roll. The other one would be field prep and jolting feedback for the increased reload speed while you are crouched. So if you have a variation of those two, I highly recommend busting this out. But I've had so much with LODESTAR, I haven't even had to use this new role that I've just recently picked up since switching over from my previous role, just to see how it functions, which was the field prep and jolting feedback. But either one are going to be awesome. You probably are going to have to put a counterbalance on. If your recoil direction was really bad on the initial row, which mine was down to a 64. I can verify that right now. Yeah, 64. From a distance, it's kind of hard to control. 600 rounds per minute. If it was a 450, it probably wouldn't be a problem, but because it's 600, it does have a little bit of extra, more frequent kick. And, you know, it's not like this ability is at a T7 or higher. So, yeah, you're feeling it a little bit. I would recommend 100% counterbalance. If you are lucky enough to get Arrowhead Break on this, just keep it. Get rid of all the other ones. If you get this roll with Arrowhead Break on it, I don't care what your magazine is, just keep it. You'll deal with the reload speed if you have to, you know, if you have the extended mag. But chances are, if you've got either one of these, flared or appended, yeah, you're going to be keeping it and you're really going to like it. You can load up to, with the way that I have it now, I think it's 126 rounds when you pick up heavy ammo. So yeah, Watchful Eye, again, because it's got another way that you can jolt targets, I'm not even worried about unstoppables because I'm going to be slowing every enemy down regardless, including barriers. For the helmet, whatever general mod that you need, and I also recommend a heavy ammo finder. The reason for this is you are going to be using an exotic primary, and of course the countdown for exotic primaries is slightly less than if you're using a legendary, and the fact that you're using a trace rifle, which is going to generate a ton of damage just in and of itself. And I also recommend a double harmonic siphon. Now you can debate me on this up and down all you want. The double harmonic siphon orb of power pickup is noticeably better. I know that you know, people don't think it's, you know, necessary to have double harmonic siphon, and I don't know, I think I mentioned this in a previous video about how I felt like having double harmonic siphon generated an obscenely powerful orb of power compared to just one harmonic siphon, but it is a noticeable bump in power. I know it says equipping multiple copies increases the potency of the generated orb, blah, blah, blah. But you know how Bungie is with, you know, stacking on top of stacking. There's only so much stacking that Bungie lets you do, even if it's just twice on any one thing, whether that's damage resistance, damage buff, healing, whatever. Bungie will only let you take that so far in a lot of cases on armors. But the harmonic siphon doesn't seem to have, I mean, it's got to be twice as powerful. I don't even know, it might even be more, to be quite honest with you, because the ability energy I generate from one harmonic siphon orb of power is significantly less than a double harmonic siphon. And again, I mentioned this in a previous video, but because of how the season has gone so far, there really hasn't been much of an opportunity to even try this, and it's just as powerful as the last time I put it on a build. So try it out and just see how it is. If you don't want to do this, you can absolutely put on like a special ammo finder for your kinetic weapon, or you can put on a second heavy ammo finder if you're going to be going into that end game activity where, you know, the ammo bricks, or maybe there's a modifier where heavy ammo is extremely scarce. All of those things will be affected by that. You could also theoretically put on a kinetic siphon, but who cares? You're not using the kinetic weapon that we've got to be clearing ads anyways. You might dump it into a major or two, or, you know, if you run out of ammo and you've got just a little bit of health left on that boss, you might quick switch to it and shoot a few rounds into it, or that mini boss. But you're not using it to clear ads, so you're not missing out on orbs of power, trust me. For the gauntlets, whatever general mod that you use, go ahead and use it. I recommend one that's either 2 or 1 energy cost, because we want to make sure that we have firepower as well as heavy-handed. The harmonic loader is completely up to you. Because we're going to be spamming the ionic sentry, it's not incredibly necessary that you put a double firepower or a double heavy-handed on. It's also not really necessary for you to put impact induction, bolstering detonation, or, you know, momentum transfer or focusing strike, because quite honestly, you're going to get that ionic sentry very quickly, and it's going to help you generate ability energy anyways. So between spamming your super and spamming Lodestar and, you know, spamming the ionic sentry, I'm not really sure that you're going to be missing out on ability energy for anything else. But I guess if you want to, you could always substitute it for a fastball if you think the reload speed on Lodestar is fast enough. And fastball would allow you to throw your grenade or your ionic sentry slightly further. So just something to think about. For the chest armor, whatever general mod that you need, 2 damage resistances, and then put on an arc reserves or a 3rd damage resistance. So the oddball out would be solar in this. Just make sure you're modded for whatever activity you're running so that you have enough damage resistance as well as ammo in the tank to use against the enemies. Geomag stabilizers, leg armor. So this has been a staple in a lot of Warlock builds for this season. I haven't made many builds with this, but I'm really glad that I decided to spec into this with Lodestar as opposed to Crown of Tempest or Sunstar, because quite honestly, this thing is an absolute powerhouse. When you pair this with Lodestar, when you pair this with the Ionic Sentry, it's one or the other that you are spamming. You're either spamming Lodestar's Jolt, you're either spamming the Ionic Sentry, or you're spamming the Chaos Reach. And because of the armor perk Close Enough, damaging targets with Chaos Reach extends its duration. Collecting ionic traces grants you energy for Chaos Reach. Sprinting while near max bolt charge will grant stacks over time. So a lot of things happening in this armor perk, but the long and short of it is that ionic traces equal your ability energy. The more you get, the faster you get your Chaos Reach back, and the more targets or target that you damage with Chaos Reach, the longer it lasts. So if you've got Chaos Reach pumping at a boss and the boss is just kind of chilling there, just letting it happen because it's DPS time, I'm telling you, the health bars on these bosses that I've been using this on just go to absolutely nothing in no time when you got a couple of people using Chaos Reach with Geomag. So take advantage of that, and then obviously you're going to be getting extra bolt charges, which is only going to give you more ionic sentries, which is something else you're going to be able to spam constantly. For the mods, on the Geomag stabilizers, make sure you're putting your general mods in here. Go ahead and masterwork it. You know you want to. Put a recuperation in here for increased health back every time you pick up an orb of power, and yes, you'll be picking up a lot. Put in Innervation for increased cooldown of your grenade, and put Absolution in here to reduce all ability cooldowns when you pick up an orb of power. You can also substitute this out for an arc weapon surge. That would absolutely not be a waste in this build since you are spamming arc constantly. For the class item, whatever general mods that you need, I 100% recommend Font of Restoration. Health is at a premium when it comes to arc because Amplified grants you the ability to dodge enemy fire, makes you harder to hit, makes you run faster, etc., etc. But what it doesn't do is just give you endless health back. So having Font of Restoration in most activities is going to be great because it's going to boost your recovery. In the Nether, it's going to boost your class abilities so you can cast your Rift more often and get at least a little bit of your health back. It's not going to give you a lot back because that's the playstyle of the Nether arena, but virtually everywhere else in the galaxy of Destiny, Font of Restoration is going to not only boost your class ability regen, but also your health back. I recommend putting on Bomber. Get your grenade back as fast as possible so you can keep spamming blind with your grenades. And last but not least, Reaper. I am not relying on my class ability very often, but the times that I'm going to need it, once I cast that Rift, when I emerge from cover, I want to be able to get an Orb of Power so that I can get my abilities back even more quickly than they're already going to be coming back. So the Tablet of Ruin, our artifact, looks a little bit different than it did the last video. Let's go through it. In the first column, I've got Unstoppable Fusion. That's a throwaway pick. I don't really need that. I could probably put it on Overload Machine Guns. In fact, while we're here right this second, why not? Because it's going to stun overloads regardless because I've got jolting feedback on my machine gun anyways. But just for the sake of saying that I have it selected because of the machine gun in general, we're going to put it on. I have anti-barrier sniper rifle. The sniper rifles will stun barrier champs, and because we've got kinetic tremors, once it's stunned, it's going to do a little bit of extra tick damage, which is very nice. Our Act 2 first perks. Overload trace rifles. Uninterrupted fire from your equipped trace rifle causes the beam to stun combatants, delaying ability energy, regeneration, and exhausting them. So here we go. You can exhaust targets with trace rifles. And because Lodestar can also apply Jolt on top of all of this, it's going to give you additional DPS. Now, again, I laugh at myself when I use the term DPS with the primary ammo weapon. And you probably should laugh at me too, because that's kind of a joke. But I'm telling you, for a primary ammo weapon, this thing puts out pretty decent damage. I'm not going to use special ammo, special ammo quality damage on some of the special ammo weapons that you can use for backup DPS, against raid bosses and things. But it's pretty darn close. And when you're in an endgame activity where, you've got shields and all these other things that you're dealing with on top of just regular health bars, that's a big deal. And exhausting targets reduces their outgoing damage. So you're in that GM, you're getting bombarded, you exhaust the target, suddenly that target slows down a little bit, all of a sudden you're getting your health back and you're back in the fight. That's a big thing. Next up, I've got Beam Medic. Rapid Trace Rifle Final Blows heal you and nearby allies. This is a no-brainer. You want to get healing as much as possible. So yes, we might have the recuperation mod. It's nice to have this Beam Medic artifact perk as well. And it is a pretty noticeable health bump. So if you haven't messed around with any trace rifles in general, put the Beam Medic on and take it into kind of a busier activity, and you'll see it. Your health bar will just kind of go up without you really even having to, make sure it's getting procced. I also recommend overclock and load when you're amplified or have bolt charge. Arc weapons gain increased handling and reload speed. Hold the line while surrounded. Machine guns and glaives can increase reload speed and stability. Final blows heal you. So again, another reason why I have a machine gun. Dielectric, defeating arc debuff targets grants bolt charge. And when you boost that, rapidly defeating arc debuff targets spawns an orb of power. So make sure you're activating your Tome of Want. And then Elemental Siphon. Rapid final blows with kinetic weapons or weapon matching your equipped super creates an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. So yes, this is another reason why I switched from the call to a kinetic and put on the sniper. Because if I do get a rapid kill with my sniper rifle, I will create an ionic trace. And you can boost this further. Elemental pickups grant matching super energy when they are collected. So you're not really going to need the extra super energy, honestly, with the way that the build is right now. But that's just a nice that's a nice little cherry on top. Harsh Refraction. Trace rifles do more damage to targets afflicted by elemental debuffs, matching their element type. This is a big one because as you jolt targets, when you switch to that alternate firing mode with Lodestar, it's going to do additional damage once it jolts the target that's firing at. So not only does it already do pretty good damage, it's going to do more good damage on the target once you switch that alternate firing mode. That's a big deal because knowing that you're never going to run out of ammo for a trace rifle is, it's unheard of. So take advantage of it while you've got these buffs because it's a lot of fun. Flashover, of course, when you gain maximum bolt charge, you become amplified. Lightning bolts deal more damage. That's a no-brainer. We're running an arc heavy class. Heavy ordnance regeneration, dealing sustained damage to targets with a heavy machine gun or rocket launcher grants damage resistance and increases grenade melee regeneration for a short duration. So again, because we're going to be using a machine gun regularly, you're going to be able to get your grenade and melee back faster if you are burning through them as fast as I do sometimes. Last but not least, Defibrillating Blast. Stunning a champion grants maximum stacks of bolt charge, triggers an art bulk that heals you, and jolts combatants that it damages. So when you're running an arc heavy class, this is a no-brainer. You want to put Defibrillating Blast on. So that is the build. There's probably going to be some questions surrounding if we can substitute anything out. The first question is going to be, can we put Cold Heart in here as opposed to Lodestar? My first response is no. The reason that I'm saying no is you're going to be able to generate elemental pickups with your kinetic weapon anyway. And one of the reasons that people put Cold Heart on is for its increased ionic trace generation. I'm not saying that they're not important, and I'm definitely not saying that you can't use that in this build. But the goal here is to make it as efficient as possible. If your main clear weapon is a special ammo weapon, at some point you're going to be looking for ammo bricks. And if by some unfortunate event you don't have any ammo bricks handy and you got to switch to your kinetic or your heavy and start burning through that ammo, that's not going to be fun for you, especially in an endgame activity. Lodestar prevents the need for having to rely on Cold Heart and Jolt, which Cold Heart, naturally does, and gives it to you with unlimited ammo. The only thing you have to do is proc it. Easiest way to proc it with this is just hip fire at a few enemies, burn through a magazine or two, and you've got it. And with 1,000 rounds per minute, I mean, it doesn't take that long to burn through that magazine. So yes, you can put Cold Heart on here. No, I don't think it's necessarily better than Lodestar. The only thing that's better about Cold Heart is the increase in damage the longer the beam lasts on a target. So virtually every major or boss you could do better DPS with, but I don't really see the practicality in virtually any other situation. If you're running a raid and you know that you're going to have a lot of ammo left over when you get to the damage phase, absolutely you can swap that out for this. But Lodestar is, in my opinion, better. And once we get the catalyst, it might even be better than Cold Heart. So that remains to be seen. I'm not going to say it will be. I'm just saying this is a lot of fun to use. And with the catalyst slot open and we don't have the catalyst yet, I think it might even get better, if not better than Cold Heart. Up here, the first question is going to be, does it have to be a kinetic damage weapon? Yes. We're taking advantage directly of not only an aspect in our art class, but as well as a perk in the artifact itself that allows you to be able to generate ionic traces with a kinetic weapon. Of course, if you're using an art class, if you're using solar or void or whatever, you get the void breach or the fire sprite, etc., etc. But yes, your kinetic weapon in this instance should be a backup DPS weapon because Lodestar is carrying you for virtually everything else. And if you're going to be asking about Watchful Eye, virtually every roll of Watchful Eye with jolting feedback will work here because you're playing on the jolt factor. However, Overflow or Field Prep are going to be the two best perks to pair with jolting feedback. And if you're hunkered down behind, cover, Field Prep's going to be nice because it's going to increase your reload speed, but jolting feedback is going to prevail in virtually every situation. I guess you could substitute this out with like a Crux Termination or the Swarm from Zavala, which is a popular one. I used that one a lot back in the day. But Watchful Eye is just too good to put down. I know you see 0 enemies killed on the screen. I get that. I had the other role previously, which is what was in my other videos. So don't jump down my throat. I just literally got this thing. But other than that, this thing is absolutely insane. The amount of ability energy you can get back with virtually no effort at all. You do have to play aggressively. Okay, I'm just going to put that out there right now. If you're not an aggressive player, you're going to have to be kind of an enemy hog. Find the enemies, get to them, sprint around the battlefield. Don't just sit in a corner picking people off with your sniper rifle. It won't work for you if you play like that. So I am going to, literally, it's not even going to be that long. I'm going to load us into the moon. I'm just going to run through a couple of waves, and you're going to see just how often I'm able to spawn everything in. The stuff is going to be coming back so fast. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to cycle through all the abilities, because the abilities that you want more than others are going to be used so often. It's going to be hard to stop cycling through them. So If you did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Warlock out there who's been looking for a good Lodestar build, send them my way or share this video with them. I want to try to help as many people as possible. And I want to thank you guys for the patience. I know I didn't bring up a build video recently. I was waiting for Act 2 to drop, so here we go. Hopefully this one finds you guys well. Of course, you guys can leave any feedback in the comments or make sure to get at me on my Discord. I will also have a dim link in the description, so make sure you check that out. All right, let's get us over to the moon. All right, so we just jumped in. Number 1 on the list, start hip firing your weapon and gaining your arc alignment. As you can see, the bar is filling up. I've got my ability energy already kind of here, but we're going to try to get some more kills. And of course, put out your flashbang grenades so you can stun targets. And boom, we've got arc alignment. So here we go. Now it's just going to be a game. We're amplified. Of course, we've got the armor charges. We're 1 stack away from having our ionic sentry. And there we go. Our bolt charge is ready. Throw out your ionic sentry. And now go to town. You can see my super energy just fills up like crazy. Switch to the arc alignment. Boom, there you go. And we get a bunch of ionic traces from it as well. I'm telling you, this Lodestar is just absolutely ridiculous. Now it's time for our first super. Naturally, I didn't get a lot of it on it because for some reason I forgot how to aim. But you can see, we're heading to the next location here. I've got my ionic sentry ready. I've got all my abilities. I've even got 10% generated on my super. It's just that easy. So as you're getting used to how this weapon fires, whether it's rapid fire like that, or you're firing from the hip like what I like to do, I'm telling you, it's well worth your time to go ahead and use this weapon. And if you're working with other guardians, like what you see there, someone who's using Void, someone who's, using another arc class, it's just going to get even beefier. So here we go. And you see the thousands that are being generated at the same time. It's just ridiculous. So anyways, so that is the build. Make sure you cycle through your abilities so that you're able to take advantage of as much as possible. We just got our second super, and I wasn't doing anything special at all. And you can see the amount of damage that I do with my super, with geomags, is just ridiculous. So if you did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a guardian out there who is looking for a really great Warlock build or way to build around Lodestar, please share this video with them or send them my way. I would love to help as many people as possible. So as always, guys, I want to say thank you for your support, the good vibes, your suggestions, your feedback. I've gotten some really great feedback just in this month alone, and I know we're barely into March, but more build videos are coming. If there's any that you want to see, make sure you let me know in the comments. Let me know how you're using Lodestar and liking Lodestar, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.